My dad said, "She's just after your money." I laughed until I heard her say, "Once the house is mine, I'm gone." So I froze our accounts and played the recording. I met Kira at a friend's rooftop party in the city. She was standing near the drinks table, sipping something pink and laughing with a small group of people I didn't know. She was magnetic, smart, funny, and confident in a way that drew people in without even trying. We started talking, and somehow the whole evening blurred by. I ended up driving her home that night, and we sat in my car outside her apartment talking until 3 a.m. The next weekend, we went on our first real date. 6 months later, I was head over heels. I'm not the type to fall fast, but Kira had this way of making me feel like the only person in the world. She'd ask about my day, remember little details I mentioned, crack jokes that always landed perfectly, and her energy seemed to light up any room. To me, it felt like I'd struck gold. I was already looking at rings. When I brought her home to meet my family, I felt nervous but mostly excited. My mom liked her right away. Kira complimented the cooking and offered to help clean up. My younger sister said she seemed cool. But my dad, he stayed quiet through most of dinner. He was polite enough, but there was something in his eyes. A sharp, calculating look that didn't match his words. Later that night, after we dropped Kira off and the house was quiet, Dad called me into the kitchen. He poured us both a glass of water, leaned against the counter and said, "Son, I don't think she's with you for the right reasons. I think she's after your money." I laughed. I laughed hard because it felt ridiculous. Kira wasn't some gold digger out of a bad movie. She had a career as a freelance graphic designer. She never outright asked me for anything. And besides, it's not like I was some billionaire tech mogul. I was a software engineer with a decent salary, sure, but nothing crazy. Dad just nodded, his face unreadable. "Be careful. Pay attention." At the time, I brushed it off. But his words lingered, like a tiny splinter you can't quite find but feel every time you move. Over the next few weeks, I started noticing small things I hadn't before, like how often Kira forgot her wallet when we went out. At first, I didn't think much of it. It happens. But it became a pattern. Most of the time, I'd end up covering everything. Then there were her comments when we passed stores. "If only I had the budget for this," she'd say with a little half-smile, her eyes flicking to me like she was waiting for me to offer. And I often did, designer bags, fancy skincare, little splurges here and there. I told myself it was normal, part of being a loving boyfriend. The first real red flag came when she asked me to co-sign a car loan. She promised it was temporary and that she'd pay me back monthly. I agreed. She never paid a cent. Still, I brushed it off. Love requires trust, right? Relationships aren't scorecards. But that nagging feeling wouldn't go away. Was I the only one investing in this? Was I falling for a fantasy while ignoring reality? Then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Wednesday, and I was working from home unexpectedly because a late meeting got canceled. Kira thought I'd left for the office hours earlier. Around noon, I heard her voice coming from the bedroom. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was about to ask if she wanted lunch when I caught a sentence that froze me mid-step. "Yeah, he's got money and he's totally in love with me. I'm just playing along until I get the house in my name. Once that's done, I'll figure out how to break it off without losing anything." Her voice was calm, casual, like she was talking about the weather. I didn't know who she was on the phone with, but it didn't matter. Her words felt like knives. I backed away quietly, sat down on the couch, and did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the voice recorder on my phone and hit record. I wasn't sure why. Maybe I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it. When she left later that afternoon, I played the recording over and over. Her voice was crystal clear. Her intent was clearer. I didn't confront her right away. First, I needed to protect myself. The next day, I called my lawyer to review the house deed and car documents. Thankfully, everything was still in my name. I froze our joint account, removed her from my credit cards, changed my passwords, and double-checked all my important documents. For the next few days, I acted normal. Made her coffee, watched movies with her, even smiled like nothing was wrong. Quietly, I packed her things into boxes and moved them to a storage unit. When I was ready, I asked her to sit down. She looked confused but curious. I opened my laptop, clicked play, and let the recording fill the room. She didn't flinch.
No tears. No επάλεγει.
Just silence. When the audio ended, she looked at me and said, "So, what now?" That was it.
No excuses. No remorse.
Just cold calculation. I handed her an envelope with the keys to the storage unit. "You'll find all your things there. I've paid for the next 2 months. After that, it's on you." She stared at me like I was the one who'd betrayed her. "You really think you're better off without me?" she asked, as if she couldn't imagine a version of my life that didn't include her. "Yeah," I said quietly.
Ido.
She left that weekend. No drama.
No tears.
Just packed a duffel bag and walked out. A few hours later, I realized she'd blocked me on everything. Phone, socials, even Venmo. I didn't try to reach out. There was nothing left to say. A week later, I drove to my parents' house. When I told Dad the full story, including the recording, he didn't say, "I told you so." He just sighed and pulled me into a hug. "I've lived longer, son," he said softly. Sometimes it's not about love. It's about what someone can take from you. You don't see it when you're deep in it. But some people treat relationships like business deals. He didn't judge me. He just sat with me while I let it all sink in. It hurt. Of course it did. I wanted it to be real. I wanted the version of Kira I met that first night to be true, not some act designed to win me over. Looking back now, I see how many signs I ignored because I wanted to believe in her. Maybe that's the hardest part. Forgiving yourself for falling for someone who never really existed. But I learned something I won't forget. Real love doesn't come with price tags, strings, or strategies. It just shows up, stands by you, and never makes you doubt. Sometimes the people who love you most, like your parents, see the storm long before you do. And when they speak, it's not to control your life. It's to save you from being pulled under. So yeah, I learned the hard way. But at least I learned. What do you think? Was I too blind or just too patient? Would you have handled it differently? I spent the next few months untangling myself from everything that reminded me of her. The apartment felt bigger and quieter without Kira's laughter bouncing off the walls. At first, I hated that silence. It made me feel like I'd failed. Not just at the relationship, but at recognizing the truth before it shattered me. There were moments when I almost called her. Not to reconcile, but to ask why. Why put on such an elaborate performance? Why fake the smiles, the interest, the affection? But I stopped myself every time. I didn't need her answers to heal. I needed space to rebuild the pieces of myself I had handed over too easily. Work became my anchor. I threw myself into projects, stayed late at the office, and even started jogging in the evenings just to clear my head. It was hard. Healing isn't clean or linear. There were nights I'd wake up from dreams where she was still in my life, and for a moment, I'd forget the betrayal. Those were the hardest mornings, the ones where my brain hadn't yet caught up to reality. My dad checked in more often during that time. He never gloated, never said, "I told you so." He'd just call and ask if I wanted to grab dinner or come over for a game. My mom sent me little care packages, homemade cookies, socks, handwritten notes. It's funny how the smallest gestures can remind you that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. One evening, months later, I found the voice recording still saved on my phone. I hovered over the delete button for a long time. A part of me wanted to keep it, to remember how close I came to losing everything to someone who only saw me as a stepping stone. But in the end, I pressed delete. Holding on to her voice meant holding on to her power, and I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. Now, when I think of Kira, it's not with anger or longing. It's with a quiet sense of gratitude, not for her, but for the lessons she left behind. I learned how easy it is to be blinded by charm, how dangerous it is to ignore gut feelings, and how important it is to listen to the people who love you enough to speak hard truths. If you asked me then, I would have said losing her was the worst thing that could happen. Now I see it was the best thing. She didn't break me. She revealed where I was already cracked. And that revelation gave me a chance to strengthen those places for the next time love comes around. So yeah, maybe my dad was right all along. Maybe he saw what I couldn't because he's lived through enough storms to recognize the clouds gathering. I used to think his caution came from cynicism. Now I know it came from care. If you're reading this and you're in a relationship that feels just a little off, listen to that quiet voice in your head. Don't silence it just because you're scared of what you might find. Sometimes the truth hurts, but it's better than living in a beautiful lie. Because real love doesn't leave you questioning your worth or your wallet. It doesn't feel like a transaction. Feels steady, whole, free.